You open your eyes, and within seconds, the defense begins. Before your feet even touch the floor, a glowing screen dictates your morning with unread emails, urgent notifications, and the demands of everyone else. This constant state of defense leads to what we can call attention poverty. A poor mindset today has very little to do with a lack of money. It is a severe, chronic deficit of focus. Long before smartphones were engineered to fracture our attention, a specific countermovement was already taking shape. Throughout the 20th century, early pioneers of personal development recognized this threat to human focus and sought to reclaim it. Thinkers of this era didn't have to deal with endless digital feeds, yet they still preached absolute, rigid control over their mental environment. They understood that external noise was the enemy of internal progress. This philosophy passed through generations of thought leaders, all of whom isolated a single universal truth. The micro-routines you execute daily act as the exact blueprints for your life outcomes. And to ensure those blueprints were followed, they uniformly pointed to one grueling specific habit, a behavioral reset that required waking up at 4 a.m., while the rest of the world remains completely unconscious. Waking up at 4 a.m. provides a window of absolute environmental isolation, a strategic opportunity to operate entirely outside the reach of external demands. Getting out of bed at that specific hour operates primarily as a behavioral trigger. It is the first domino that automatically initiates a cascade of harder secondary habits. In system design, this is a forcing function, a mechanism guaranteeing an outcome by placing deliberate friction in front of a behavior. Overriding the biological friction of leaving bed sets a rigid baseline of self-discipline for the next 16 hours. Winning this isolated battle early recalibrates the brain's perception of difficulty. By the time you face the cognitive friction of a complex project or a physical workout, you are now measuring that effort against the far greater resistance of your own biological instinct for comfort. By defeating the baseline human instinct for comfort at 4 in the morning, you actively prove to your nervous system that your long-term architectural goals matter more than immediate gratification. Consider the physical reality of the 4 a.m. environment. There are 0 incoming communications, 0 social obligations, just absolute, uninterrupted sensory silence. This complete absence of external stimuli generates a temporary attention monopoly. For these couple of hours, you retain 100% ownership of your own cognitive bandwidth.
This is a direct comparison of cognitive load. Attempting deep work at 8 a.m. is heavily penalized by constant task switching and interruption spikes. At 4 a.m., that friction simply doesn't exist. This profound isolation forces a complete pivot. Your brain stops trying to respond to the outside world and instead begins to dictate its own internal logic. It is exactly why modern spiritual and psychological teachings require absolute internal focus. You cannot calm a troubled, distracted mind while the environment around it is screaming for attention. 4 a.m. acts as a daily sensory deprivation chamber. It is an environment engineered specifically to flush out external demands, so you can finally focus on your own core objectives. When you zoom out from the mechanics of a single morning, you start to see the compounding neurological effects this habit generates over months and years. You enter a psychological process of deleting the old self. The reactive, comfort-seeking identity is systematically dismantled through daily, relentless repetition. Strategists and authors who study human nature consistently identify this absolute control of your own time as the ultimate foundation of personal power. The true rich mindset they advocate rarely starts with capital. It begins with the stark realization that time and attention are your only truly non-renewable assets. Executing the 4 a.m. forcing function is the ultimate act of paying yourself first. You are allocating your absolute prime cognitive hours to your own growth, long before the rest of the world wakes up to take its cut. You step out of the dark, and by the time the sun rises, your day is structured, directed, and completely under control. Commanding the quietest, darkest hour of the day provides the structural foundation required to navigate the loudest, most chaotic hours that follow.